And the medicines basically, they create this fresh playground in your nervous system, and not just your mind, but your nervous system, where your nervous system is able to relax, sometimes for the first time in decades. I've literally had people come in, and it's like their body gets a big exhale, and they can say, all right, I can let go. I've been wound up and stressed and tense and on edge since I was 10 years old, and my mom did this or this happened or whatever.
Welcome to the Adriana Ostapenko podcast. I'm here with a new friend, but also very excited to have him here, Mike Zeller. I actually heard of Mike from multiple of my colleagues and friends. He did hosted a few workshops to some of, within my network. And I kept hearing his name come up over and over and over again from different people. And I knew immediately I had to reach out to Mike and connect with him, someone that I would want to get to know. So I'm very excited to introduce him to all of the our YouTube community here. So welcome, Mike.
Hey, Adriana, excited to be here. And yeah, getting connected with the real estate mastermind crew up in Canada, and also seeing how much people were hungry for deeper levels of connection, deeper levels of belonging, deeper levels of becoming. I like to think of the process of overcoming as the process of becoming. And, so I'm a peak performance coach who utilizes NLP, neuroscience, breath work, psychedelics, and other various tools to accelerate growth rapidly, to heal trauma, to open people up to deeper levels of their capacity for showing up in the greatest version of themselves. So it's going to be a ton of fun to connect more deeply, and fingers crossed we also get to connect in person someday later this year. Who knows?
Yeah, I would absolutely love that. Thank you so much. Give me a little bit of just a snapshot. So when I go on your website, you are a coach. How do you describe your coaching programs or your coaching style?
Yeah, so I have a pretty varied background as an entrepreneur. I've started 16 different ventures, several in the real estate arena. I've had a lot of different real estate investments as well. But along the way, I felt like my calling was to unlock people's highest potential. And I remember that even at the age of 20, I was leading a campus organization at the time. It was a campus ministry, and I was like, I think my purpose is unleash people's God-given talent and potential. That's why I'm here. And but then just initially got fascinated with Tony Robbins, spent 1,447 hours with Tony Robbins, walked on fire 3 times with Tony. It was an intense 2-year season of growth with Tony, and he's amazing. He's the best in the world. And then but then I was hungry for other exploration, other growth. And then, unfortunately, we went through a financial reset where we lost $1 million, had a massive hit in 2018, 2019. Same year I got married was 2018. And then 2020, we're out of that, or mostly out of it. And my wife gets pregnant. And my wife's a multiple-time suicide survivor. And the pandemic, the PTSD from her childhood trauma. She experienced so much childhood trauma, a narcissistic, abusive mom and stepdad. And it created a spiral of 2.5 years where, I've been a student of peak performance psychology, but I never really studied trauma. And I was literally thrust into the middle of like solving a crisis, and a crisis that was very real and very personal. and it was the hardest thing I ever had to do. And my wife would say it's probably the hardest thing she ever had to do to get herself out of that as well. But in the midst of that, I was like, we both made a decision of like, hey, if we can figure this out, because she had incurable complex PTSD, which is the worst form, so since 18 months old, her first memory as an 18-month-old is seeing her stepdad choke her mom on the floor. So that was the sort of trauma she was exposed to over and over and over. And she was the oldest of 11 kids. And we had a decision. If we can figure this out, we're going to help others. And that's now what I get to do. And it's been a ton of fun so far, and it's been beautiful.
Such an incredible personal story. I think for most of us, our businesses, especially entrepreneurs or businesses or services or products, come as a highlight of a need, that we have experienced within ourselves so deeply. And that's what causes so much impact because it's so personal and it's so, genuine coming from you. I know you recently had a retreat. How did that
Yeah.
go?
Yeah, we just had another Rewired retreat. So in the Rewired retreat, we do it's 3 nights, and it's for leaders and entrepreneurs, high performers, but it's not your ordinary conference or retreat where you get tactics and tools and strategies. We get some of that, but we focus more on attuning your heart, attuning yourself to your higher potential, shedding almost like those bag of bricks that you've been carrying around. We all have some of them, and it can be stuck energy, trauma, beliefs, and we just get really deep, and we shed every single person. I say thus far, every single person that's come to the retreat has had a significant breakthrough, and I promise on when people join, it's going to be one of the best experiences of their life. And so far, no one has disagreed. I'm sure that will come at some point, but but what happens is, we do 2 rounds of plant medicine. And the reason we do the plant medicines and the medicines, I won't go into too much detail on them, but it's a little sassafras, kanna, psilocybin, not much on the psilocybin though, very light on that, and MDMA. And the medicines basically, they create this fresh playground in your nervous system, in not just your mind, but your nervous system, where your nervous system is able to relax, sometimes for the first time in decades. I've literally had people come in, and it's like their body gets a big exhale, and they can say, all right, I can let go. I've been wound up and stressed and tense and on edge since I was 10 years old, and my mom did this or this happened or whatever. And we internalize. Most of our agreements in life are unconscious agreements we made at another time point in history, but we might carry them forward for decades or the rest of our life. And some people are trapped literally for a lifetime with old agreements that aren't really true, that don't really serve them, like I'm not worthy, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you suck at XYZ, or self-worth. You look at people that battle self-worth their whole life, and then you look at people that break through and create a whole new paradigm and heal. There was an inflection point, an incisive moment where there was what we call a decision, but a decision that is arrived to oftentimes in a flash. It seems like a flash. All right. And I want to get people to that decision point rapidly, where when your identity shifts, like when a smoker realizes he is now a non-smoker, right? Or I was always a failure. Now I'm actually a success. Then you act differently because your identity has changed. So the tools, plant medicines, we use them because they double your neuroplasticity for up to 2 weeks. So nothing else in the world gives that sort of capacity. Then I couple it with the deep understanding of neuropsychology, rewiring your nervous system, trauma, belief system architecture, all those things. We can do 10 years of work sometimes in a weekend, and it's really, really fun.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I love that. How do you see that, going through not only the retreat, but the coaching that you do with people? How do you see that it really helps them reach their, peak performance?
So this quote from Tony Robbins says, all lasting change in your life is a change in identity. Everything else is a fight. Identity is the most powerful force that controls the human psyche. Change your identity, change your life. Expand your identity, expand your life. Shrink your identity, shrink your life. From Tony Robbins. So like what happens, like for example, at the last retreat, we had one of the things that happened. So we had one of the women had a radical shift in her relationship with her father, who's passed away. And also that same person recognized that she had been striving for all this success but she already had it. But she was creating emptiness in her marriage because she was striving for something that felt like she hadn't attained, but she had already had it. And it was just a subtle but powerful identity. Now she can create from this identity of I am already successful, which means creating from a state of fulfillment versus a state of lack. If I'm creating from a state of lack, that's a different energy. It's a different state. And she's more present and connected with her heart, and which means she's more powerful because your heart is 60 times more electromagnetically powerful than your mind, according to Heart Math Institute, where they can literally measure the electromagnetic waves using EKG or ECG. All right. So if your heart is tapped in and connected, like you look at an Oprah Winfrey or a Tony Robbins or Sarah Blakely, someone that is just dynamic, Gabor Mate, someone that is dynamically powerful, they have full integration, heart, mind, body, spirit. That's what we want. And when you can create from that vantage point, that's when you become your most magnetic and powerful and aligned self. And that's what I help people get to in the weekends.
That's fantastic. Do you do like ongoing coaching as well, or is it mainly focused on the weekends?
Yeah, I work with a select number of VIP one-on-ones. Actually, one of the clients is from the same real estate mastermind group that I'm going to have a session with here in about 30 minutes. But I do some of that, and then I do group sessions where we focus on. I really have two main pathways. Rewiring your relationship with money is one of my group programs. So I have that coming up and kicks off into this month, actually. And then rewiring your whole nervous system, subconscious identity, beliefs, alter ego. We do some alter ego work in the money one as well, and at the retreats. And one-on-one, I go through all that, and then we work on finding your deepest area of genius. So you find your natural pathway to build wealth, fulfillment, and passion in your life. And then just basically get unstuck, so you can show up in your highest and fullest. But a lot of it is identity work, because if I can help you anchor to this identity that's way over here, that is true, just as true as the part of you, actually more true than the part of you that shows up today. Like I think the shadow self that we show up in, the half-ass, or where we're kind of like not giving it our all, or we're playing small, or imposter, like that's the real imposter. The person over here that is our highest, most powerful magnetic version, and I can often see that person at the retreats because they have access to new dimensions, and they also see that person much more clearly because they have access to new dimensions. So yeah, I love doing one-on-one or group. My one-on-one is a little bit more limited, as you can imagine, but yeah.
Is there a way to unlock some of that identity without the assistance of the plant medicine?
Yeah, definitely. The plant medicine is just a tool. I think it's the most powerful tool for creating rapid subconscious growth. Now, you can get equivalent effects in rewiring your nervous system and your subconscious and neuroplasticity with, say, 6 to 12 months of very steady and consistent transcendental meditation. But you might spend a couple hundred hours doing that versus what I could do in 30 hours. And in a single weekend, I can get you the same result you might get in 6 to 12 months. So that's, and then of course, if you do 10 years of therapy, you could probably get there too. But most of my clients want to go a little bit faster. So that's why. But sometimes the shift will happen just from an NLP session as well. So like, we don't necessarily have to do that. It just depends on, I don't recommend that particular, plant medicines and psychedelics for everybody. You have to use it wisely and cautiously, and it's safe for the vast majority of people when used under the right guidance, because it's a powerful tool. It's like, you got a race car in your garage. It's not, you aren't driving a Ford Escape. You've got a freaking race car. Drive it cautiously and wisely.
What would you say are the things that, people ultimately need to work on to allow for something like this to be successful in their lives?
Well, I think for if someone comes to my retreat, for example, I know the retreat will be successful in helping them make the beautiful shifts if they come with a spirit of openness and just trust the guidance, because I've trust the process, we like to say. So because I know in the environment I've created a great recipe. I've created a great recipe of a safe container, where you have space to be vulnerable, space to be real. You are encouraged and invited to in a way that you maybe have never experienced before. You feel love. You get literally, when you're on some of these medicines, you get flooded with love and empathy for others, but also for yourself. Because so many of us, we're the harshest critic of ourselves, right? Especially women. You guys are so hard on yourselves internally. And then when you get, so almost think of like you get to recalibrate. And my wife, for example, she was a super anxious person, hyper vigilant, panic attacks 3 or 4 times a week, suicidal ideation, all that stuff. Her nervous system was wired to like an 11 out of 10. Now it's down to like a 4 out of 10. So we've had to take it down and down and down. She's much calmer and centered and connected. Now afterwards, we call it integration. We have to do the continuation of the courageous steps, leaning in, trusting, leading from this heart connect, like this heart and mind connection. Not most of us are a little bit too much in our heads, and we say in life, get in your head and you're dead. Because your heart has a lot of wisdom. That's that intuition side as well. And we need both. I was too much in my head, and now I'm much more in my body as well, in my heart.
How do you navigate, like, I'm going to call it a rational world, especially in business, and still remain connected with your heart?
It takes practice. It takes awareness of when you're getting out of what we would call coherence. All right. And also it takes awareness of like, hey, there's some toxic people that are not going to lead you to fulfillment. Like even a lot of the people I've worked with from Synergy, they're not toxic themselves, but they were in relationships and partnerships with people outside of Synergy that were like, this was not really where they wanted to go. And if you keep going down a path that is not in alignment and attuned to your higher self, to greater levels of joy, and greater levels of building wealth in the way that you want, it's you're going to be acting in incongruence, and your body will unconsciously even resist that. So it can take practice. It can also take courage of vulnerability, of inviting. If you're, in a partnership or a marriage or whatever, where you invite your partner, hey, what if we try this? What if we, for example, one of the habits we talked about at the retreat, let's stop recycling negative energy. Why don't we we can recycle old stories of frustration, anger, mistakes. What if we recycle positive stories and anchor? And that literally creates a different vibrational energy. And then what think of our brains and our nervous systems, it's like an antenna. Whatever channel we turn to is what we are going to receive. If I go to ESPN, I'm going to receive ESPN. If I go to the Crisis News Network or CNN, I'm going to receive. It's going to ramp me up into a crisis state. If I go into a Gaia or a National Geographic, it's going to create a different experience. So, but our nervous systems are that way too. The people that we interact with, the belief systems, our beliefs are really thoughts that we've thought repetitively enough that they're hardwired in. They can be rewired, but we have to do some deeper digging to rewire a belief. So, it's just really the question is what vibration do you want to live your life at? One of scarcity or abundance, one of joy, one of stress, one of peace, or one of strife, one of love, or one of dog eat dog.
How do people even begin to get attuned with, their I'm gonna call it true identity, or their
Yeah.
hearts, or their like bodies.
Yeah. I think so. Some of this comes from my book, this part. I think it shows up in four main areas. So the first one is your unique talents. I'll just give you an overview. Unique talents, that's like your gifts, strengths, and weaknesses. Second, your defining life experiences. Like if I go through your life, there's probably pivotal moments that thrust you into the real estate world, that thrust you into the city you're living in, that thrust you into the values and belief sets that you have and what you care about. Third thing is the key relationships in your life. Who do you already naturally have a cluster of relationships to that you're also drawn to, that you enjoy? And then also people over here that you're like, man, they bring me death. I don't want to be around them. Right. And if we choose the ones that give us life versus death, guess what? Our life energy is fed. And the fourth area is your values and passions. What do you stand for? What do you stand against? And your passions, what are you curious about? What lights you up? You're twice as likely to step into flow state. And flow state is the psychological state where you're losing track of time. You're immersed in your work, and you're just in this. And they call it flow because you're literally almost like flowing downstream, and you have this vibrancy and richness, and you are also 500% more productive in that flow state. Like you think of an athlete, they can't miss a shot. They're making every shot they shoot. Well, we can have flow state in our daily lives, right? And then it releases all 6 positive neurochemical cocktails. The serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, norepinephrine, all those. Releases those. And so you're stacking your nervous system with positive cocktails, which also the people that have the happiest levels of life satisfaction, guess what they have? They have the most flow state in their life. But you can reverse engineer it by paying attention to the clues in those 4 quadrants. And so I have a process, my Genius Within book, where I take people through all 4 of those quadrants to gather the clues. And I'll share this one story. I had Anita. She was a CEO with over 80,000 employees. And she did a VIP day with me, and she did the workbook that I sent her for Genius Within. 8 a.m. Sunday morning, she shows up for a VIP day, and she's like, Mike, you've already given me the single biggest breakthrough of my whole 34-year career. So whatever we do today is just pure gravy. I was like, whoa.
Good feedback.
Yeah, I was like, boom, this works. So
what was her breakthrough? Do you remember?
Yeah, she was her biggest breakthrough, because when one of the questions, or one of the personality tests I had her do, was the wealth dynamics profile. In the wealth dynamics, she went through that. And that's the personality test that shows you a natural pathway to build wealth. And when she went through that, she realized, oh, I'm a supporter. A supporter is one who likes to lift up their people. And that's my pathway to build wealth. And so she was stepping into a consulting chapter in her life and career. And so she saw, hey, this is who I am. This is why I succeeded. This is what I do best, is I lift up others around me and help them flourish. And that's my special sauce. I'm one of the best in the world at that. So anyway, but I've had a lot of others that when they do that process, because you get the most amount of clues gathered about who on earth you are, or what on earth you're meant to do, that you've ever had in your life. And then it's just like popcorn. Patterns pop like popcorn.
That's incredible. I'm sure that a lot of what people experience is almost like flipping a switch, that, you can't undo it once it comes to light. And once you just realize what it is, there's no going back. And that's where I'm sure the impact that generates throughout, ripple effects throughout your whole life.
Yeah, 100%. So true.
Let's talk about trauma a little bit as we near the end here. I know you've said you've done a lot of work with trauma. I know that when I met with you, and honestly, there could be things in there. Probably there are.
There always is. We might have a little bit of little T trauma. You might not have any massive ones, but we all have a little bit somewhere.
I'm sure that I'm aware of, because when I remember when we met, I said, I don't know that I have like that,
Yeah.
like a lot of deep, dark things to come out of the closet necessarily. But again, maybe I do. But I also know that you work with people that are coming from like a really, vulnerable place of like trauma. What is there any really difference between dealing with somebody that came in that's seeking like just some like unlocking some professional things or
Mhm.
peak performance versus somebody that's coming to you that's dealing with like some deep trauma?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference, I think. But I always approach, whether it's my coaching one-on-one or my group, I want to start with a deep attunement of where they are at. So, like, even on my group program, I have people knock out like 10 questions before they enter. So I know, hey, like on my next round of my money rewiring, your relationship with money, I probe in the questionnaire of like, hey, what's your money traumas? What's your money stories? What beliefs? What work have you done? Where do you need to grow? What feels stuck? What feels limiting? What feels off? All that stuff. So I want to understand where people are at, because we not none of us have the same starting point, and none of us have the same desired destination. So, but my role is to help accelerate your progress and help you take radical leaps in ideally a pretty short time. Like most of my clients, if it's one-on-one, I typically do 90-day packages. A lot of other coaches do 1 year or 6 months. I'm not doing the slow accountability type. Did you make your sales calls? Did you evaluate this number of deals? All that. I'm not doing that. I'm doing a radical, rapid transformation of your identity so that everything else can flow downhill from where you're at. So, but trauma has a lot more nuance too. And you start seeing, as I study trauma, you can start seeing patterns more easily, and it shows up in, sometimes you can literally feel like that person has a cloud of a gray cloud just hanging over their disposition and their life. And then as we shed it, like I had a guy, one of the guys at my retreat, his name's Derek. He's cool with me sharing the story, but it was like it was gone, and then you could see his face was lit up from Thursday to Sunday. And I had known him for like 9 months. He always had a little bit of a cloud over him. No more. I've talked to him since. No cloud. It's gone. Now he can go back if he really wants to and get that cloud again. But now he has freedom of choice, because we've created a new pathway. He literally has an exit ramp off the highway. So others came. They didn't. Sometimes people have come and they didn't really know why they were there, but they were curious and they knew there was something more for them. And some of those, like Chris Bucci, he came and he's like, I didn't even know what to expect. I've never even done any of this. And it was, wow. It was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And it opened him up in a way he didn't even know was there and that he wanted. And his connection with Sarah and his wife is so much deeper as a result. His connection with himself and his heart. He was shut off. He didn't even know. So I as a guy, I didn't even know how shut off I was in my heart. And most guys are disconnected with their heart to some degree, and a lot of women are too. So
Yeah, I guess that's one of the questions that I had. Do you find that there is, I don't know if you use the language around like female and male energy. Do you
mhm.
find that like what is the role of female and male energy when it comes to some of this, work that you do?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a masculine, feminine, I would call it, we all have both, and learning to dance with both. Like I can dance with my feminine energy a lot more effectively now than I could a decade ago. And I have more appreciation and respect for it. And it's almost like feminine is flow, masculine is direct. Let's go. Let's, kind of attack, right? Feminine is enjoy, breathe, savor, smell the roses. And it's an invitation. Masculine is more like, even, biologically, penetrate. Feminine is receive. And so you need both, right? Even the quote manifestation, law of attraction. I'm going to sit and receive and just attune myself. Well, then the next step, you need to go into act.
Yes.
to activate the receiving. So we need both. If you have an unbalance in both, or in one or the other, you can create issues organizationally or in your personal life. And like my wife's a very feminine creature, but to get stuff done, she needs to be able to tap into her masculine and focus. And I'm a masculine man. I need to be able to tap into my feminine to be emotionally connected, to be available, to enjoy and savor the pleasure of life. So some of the work we actually did at the last retreat was pretty deep around the masculine and feminine. And we had one of the women who lost her dad at a young age. Just by one of the exercises, I can see it right now. She had a beautiful shift internally and felt healed by the masculine presence of another guy in the group, and she could, what caught for the feminine, what shifted for her is she was able to relax because she felt safe in the masculine and appreciated and loved and seen in that moment. And that just shifted her internal state. And then now as she went back home, has shifted her marriage already. Like her partner is like, wow, this is cool. I don't know. I don't believe it yet because it just started. Will it stick? So, but it's sticking so far.
Okay.
And
so
her partner's believing. So
do you find that those changes and those like light bulb moments are pretty permanent in somebody's lives, or not, but also is there intentional like habits that they need to form to continue to live into the new identity they've discovered?
Great question. So the work at a retreat, for example, I look at it like, all right, let's say it's a train and the train has left San Francisco on its way to New York. Well, let's say at the retreat, we get you all the way to like Montana, and you still got to go down through Chicago and all the way back up the East Coast, but you're already on your journey. So you already have momentum. You already have a new pathway. Literally, it's like the other metaphor is like driving down the interstate. Now there's an exit ramp, and the exit ramp is heart connection and powerful resonance and more magnetic energy and more love and more creating from love instead of emptiness or lack. Right. So now you can choose to go off that ramp and go down that path, or you can go back your old patterns. But you'll know, and you have this awareness, and people, myself included, will still sometimes choose that old pathway. But I course correct a lot quicker, and I get back on that pathway because I still got to build that new neuro pathway, right, and reinforce it with habits and choices. But now I have freedom. It's like before there was no exit ramp. You're like driving by, and there's like all your friends are going to Disney World, and you can see that there's a Disney World, but they have an exit ramp and you don't. What the heck? Now you have that exit ramp. So yeah, you still have to have to step into that pathway and do work on it, but it feels less like work and more like positive growth.
I love that analogy. For people that, first of all, I'd say for anybody that's seeking to achieve, some accessing a state of flow, unlocking their peak performance, accelerating their growth, obviously they should go get your book. I don't know if you have more than one, but at least My Genius Within. They should, find you, join some of your programs and retreats. For those that's on top of that, and for those before they get to you, is there any practical tips that you can give people out there that can start them down this journey already?
Yeah, good question. So you can do some muscle testing. This is more fun to do at a retreat. But you can actually just ask your body and if you tap in and you do a quick breath meditation of 4-4-4-4, which is take 4 seconds to breathe in, hold for 4 seconds, release for 4 seconds, leave empty for 4 seconds, and do that cycle like 2 or 3 times with your eyes closed with a little bit of meditative music in the background. And then you ask your body to speak. Ask your conscious mind to relax and ask your subconscious to speak. It will literally help you once you get agreement, once it feels safe to speak, it will literally help guide you. All right. And then you're leading, like you think of the most powerful people in the world, the most successful, the most fulfilled, they put themselves generally in extraordinarily right positions. And you don't get in an extraordinarily right position if you're accidentally stumbling into it in most cases. You have a deep intuition, you use your logic brain, you use all parts of you. You know, you think of a Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was using, in his second turn at Apple, he was using all parts of himself in a much more complete way. Tony Robbins, much more complete version of himself than the version of himself in his 20s. So I think that's one thing. But I think also just pay attention to clues. Like another friend of mine, she's a very successful artist now, but 7-8 years ago, it was about 10 years ago, she was selling like medical devices, very unfulfilled, making good money, but very unfulfilled. Her name's Erin. And I asked her, well, Erin, and she's like, Mike, what should I do? And I was coaching her one day, and I was like, Erin, what set you on fire? What did you love doing? What could you just creatively do and enjoy when you were a kid? She said, I loved to paint. I'm like, cool. Well, what if you just, keep your job? What if you just go and explore painting for an afternoon every month, and then maybe an afternoon every week, and then just see how it evolves? And, I like to say, I said in my book, a curiosity often becomes a passion often, but not always becomes a purpose, and a purpose often, but not always becomes a life path. We only get so many life paths. Well, guess what? Erin kept exploring that. Eventually, she started realizing she had some real talent in that. She eventually started making a little money on the side, selling her art. Eventually, she made the plunge a couple years in to quit her job. And now she makes more money and is way more fulfilled doing her art. And she's an incredible artist. She just opened up her first art gallery here in Nashville. Right? But she was paying attention to the clues. Clues are all around us. We just got to attune our antenna to see them and hear them.
That's awesome. Do you think people have one pathway or one purpose that they're meant to discover?
I think we have multiple pathways and purposes, but I think they can all be in alignment for different reasons and tap into different dimensions. It's kind of like, hey, you fell in love with this one person. Well, they brought out something different in you. Fall in love with this other person. They bring out something different in you. Both people could have been good for you, but it was just a different pathway and purpose. If you chose that, you activate this a little bit more. Choose that person, you activate that a little bit more. So same for career and vocation. I think the expression of our gifts becomes a little bit different.
Last question for you as we start to round up here. If you had the world's attention for 30 seconds, what message would you share?
What if the person that has shown up today is the real imposter, and that the real you is so much freaking greater than you actually realize? And what if you lived and acted and decided from the vantage point of the much, much greater version of you? How might your life be different?
I love that. Definitely would make people think a few times over. Thank you so much, Mike. This has been fantastic. How can people find you?
On all social media, I am at the Mike Zeller, and that's Zeller, and then MikeZeller.com. You can also get my 14 tools for rewiring your nervous system and your brain, and that is just at neurorewiring.com. So you can grab that free download, and also you'll get my free short ebook on neuro rewiring too.
Amazing. And in terms of your programs, you said there's something coming up soon. How can people get involved in that?
Yeah. If you're interested in Rewired, one of my programs, I have Rewired Retreats, And then I have the virtual programs that run twice a year each. And those you can just message me on Instagram. I do have an application link, so I can send you that. But you can also just reach out to me and see if it's a fit. The retreats are amazing. If you're drawn to that, I literally promise it's one of the most spectacular experiences. I've led like 50 retreats and been to like 150 events. The special combo is my favorite that I've ever experienced, and certainly the favorite that I've ever created too. But it's pretty amazing. So if you're drawn and curious, the other thing I would say is if you're drawn and curious, beautiful, trust that intuition. If you're not, then don't. I mean, plant medicine experiences don't call everyone, and that's okay too.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. And it's just really insightful conversation. I'm sure it's gonna, bring a lot of value to people out there. I appreciate you. I'm looking forward to connecting with you further.
Yes,
And thanks for
likewise,
coming.
Adriana.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you.